Hi friends, it's Terri Gaines. In this video tutorial, I'm going to share a fun fold card created with the Mediterranean Blooms Designer Series paper. This paper is so bright and cheery. On one side of the 6 double-sided designs, there are the citrus fruit designs, floral designs. On the other side, there are some great designs that are all in the blue tone colors. I'm going to be using the citrus designs for this card. I'm actually going to be using these 2 prints, but when I'm all done, I'm going to share a card that's completed with these 2 prints. Now you can use any Designer Series paper or colored cardstock for this project. The card base is 8.5 by 5.5. It is scored in 4 locations. The first score line is at 4 1/4. The next one is at 5 7/8. Then we have one at 6 3/8. And then one at 8 inches. So the card base is scored like this. I like using Terri tape to adhere this card, and Terri tape is a very strong adhesive. So I'm going to put the Terri tape on that very end 1/2 inch tab that is between the 8 and 8.5 mark. And I'm going to put that on before I start folding the card. So the card base is folded in half with the Terri tape or that small panel on the right side on top. And then I would suggest that you take your bone folder and crease all of these creases the very same fold. So this is a mountain fold, and so they're all scored or creased the same direction. I'm going to use my bone folder to burnish all of these score lines and get them all to fold in this direction. And what happens then is we kind of create this pop-out panel that's going to be on the card. So the way I like to put this together is I open it up, the adhesive is face down, and then I fold over 2 panels, the panel with the adhesive and the next panel, and that should line up right at that score line. Then I'll take the backing off of the Terri tape and then fold this part of the card onto that Terri tape. Now it does buckle, it does not lay flat, and that's majority of the times it does not, and that's okay. What I do now is I hold it down at the score line, fold I should say, and take my bone folder and take that buckling out and make it lay flat, and that will be the assembly of the card base. I have all the measurements provided. I do have a PDF on my blog. If you found me via YouTube, look in the text portion of this video. There'll be a direct link to my blog post where you can download the PDF. Then we have a Designer Series paper layer. I chose the print that has this print, and I'm going to use my Stampin' Seal to adhere this. So if you're duplicating this project, you're going to use your favorite adhesive. Now this is 1 3/8 inch in width, 5 1/4 in height. I look at the top, the bottom, and the left side for equal spacing when I adhere this. I let the other side, the right side, fall into place. It should be equal spacing to the next score line, but if it's slightly less or more, that's okay because it all camouflages into the next panel. Then I have listed a card base layer, 4 inches by 5 1/4. I'm using basic white, and I have texturized this with the Timber 3D folder. So I'm going to adhere this. Now this could be Designer Series paper. It can be a variety of different things. You can stamp your cardstock, or you could actually leave this layer off. This is really like an optional layer. I'm looking for equal spacing on the top, bottom, and the right side, and have that fall into place like so. Then I have listed that we have decorative panel number 1 and number 2, and I list some measurements. So these are the measurements that I list. You can cut rectangles. You can actually create these larger if you wanted. But what I'm going to do is use the Countryside Corner dies, and I am using for, instead of cutting this size, I'm using the 3rd largest die. So I've cut the garden green out of this, and then for the next layer, I'm using the 4th largest die with the basic white. So I've got that for my decorative panel. We also have a panel that's a sentiment layer. I have measurements, so if you wanted to cut rectangles, you can. Now I mentioned this can be larger. This can be larger. The sentiment layer just needs to be smaller than what you have for the decorative layer. I also use the countryside corner dies for this, the 4th largest and the 5th largest. So if you have these dies, this would be the 1st largest and work your way down accordingly. So we have these two. And the last thing on the list is decorative images, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So first, what I'm going to do is attach the sentiment layer. I mentioned that needs to be smaller, and it is smaller than this one. So what I'm going to do is adhere this with my double-sided adhesive, and I'm going to look for equal spacing on the top and bottom, center it that way, and then equal spacing on the right and left. Now what I'm going to do is fold this down. This layer is getting attached just to this portion, this small panel. You place this down first, so this becomes your guide. Now, when we place this down, our goal is to cover up this label or layer, and you can use this as your guide. I'm going to attach this with dimensionals. You can use your double-sided adhesive, but I'm going to use dimensionals and apply them just on this panel right like this. As I mentioned, this is the guide for where to put your dimensionals. Now when you take these backings off, your goal now is to cover up the dimensionals and to hide this sentiment layer. And so now you can decide how you want this placed. If you want it centered, a little bit to the right or left, you decide how you want that layered and place that down. Now this pops up with that panel. Isn't that a cool layout? So now what we need to do is our decorative images. I'm using the designer series paper. There are dies and stamp set that coordinates with that. I use the stamp set for this hello, and then I use heartfelt hexagon sentiment for this. I stamped those in garden green. Now these actually have dies in that bundle. There are some dies. It's bundled with the dies and stamp set that you can get a 10% savings, or you can buy the dies or the stamp set on their own. These two are the only two on the designer series paper of all the 6 designs that can be cut out with the dies. So I cut both of these out, but I only need one of them. And I'm going to attach that for my decorative image. Now you can have a stamped image, you can have just a sentiment. Any decorative image would work for this. So what I like to do is just kind of curve this a little bit, kind of make some cavities on the bottom and curl the ends up a little bit for texture. And I'm going to attach it like so. Now part of these greenery pieces are going to hang over, so I'm going to make sure that I do not put any dimensionals on the edge of this design. And then what I'm going to do is just actually put 3 of these on here. These are very strong, you don't need a lot of them. And I stamped a sentiment right here, so I'm just going to make sure I don't cover that up. And then add a little bit of embellishments to this. I'm going to use the Glossy Dots assortment. And these have 4 different colors, 3 different sizes. And I'm going to use these daffodil yellow ones here. And I'm going to just pop some color onto the center of these little flowers. And I'm going to use I'm going to just use the smaller ones here and attach those. And there we have a fun fold card created with the designer series paper. I mentioned I already had one created with the other designs in that pack. And this one is fussy cut. You have to fussy cut that. But what a fun card to create, and it stands up really nice for display. And if you don't want to sign your name here, you can add another label to the back and sign your card on the back. So I hope you enjoyed this project. As I mentioned, I have a PDF you can download with photos and measurements and a link to this YouTube video so you can watch it to recreate this project. I would love to have you subscribe to my YouTube channel. And thanks for stopping by. Take care and happy creating.